Welcome to Gaming in the Past. Sometimes I look back at the original Xbox and think, wow, I forget sometimes just how powerful this box is. I also get sad since Xbox was so good back in the OG and 360 days, but that's neither here nor there. The reason I bring this up is because you look at game franchises like Silent Scope, a series of games that started out in arcades before coming to consoles. All three games were released on PS2 as separate games, with the first one also coming to Dreamcast and GBA, weirdly enough. I can see why the Dreamcast could only handle one game, but you'd think the PS2 could have at least the first two games released on a single disc. But then here comes the Xbox, releasing Silent Scope Complete in 2004, which had all three games included on one disc. It's not like these were the most power-consuming games, even for the time, but it was still impressive to see these games all come out on one Xbox disc. Now, I haven't played these games on anything other than Xbox and my emulation device, so I don't know much about how these games were on PS2. But I can take a guess they're mostly the same. In case you don't know, this is a series of arcade rail shooters where you use a sniper rifle to take out the bad guys. How does this game hold up 20 plus years later? Well, let's check it out. Before we do though, this game has a special light gun or light rifle to use, similar to other light gun controllers for other games and consoles. Unfortunately, I don't have that, and I don't plan to spend $100+ for it. Thankfully, this game does support regular controllers, so I'll be using that for the game. It's cool that you get to shoot what game you want to play to select it. It's a basic menu otherwise, but it gets the job done. Starting off with the first game, simply titled Silent Scope, this game was released in 1999 for arcades and 2000 for Dreamcast and PS2, and 2002 for GBA. This game definitely looks and feels like a Dreamcast game, if you know what I mean. Not in a bad way. If you've played enough Dreamcast games, you may know what I mean. Anyway, there is a training mode for this game for those who might need help. It's actually a little more varied than I thought it would be, and it basically shows everything you need to know when playing the game. But on to the main game itself, where we are trying to rescue the president and his family. This is where I get political. Since this is an arcade game, there is a timer, so you gotta extend your time by taking out enemies. Extra points in time depending on where you shoot them at. If you couldn't tell from watching, this game's controls definitely take some getting used to. Precise aiming can be really hard to do as the movement is very sensitive. I think there's an option to change that, but I forgot to. The default is quite sensitive, so if you can change it, do it. It's not hard enough to make the game unfun, but it sure can make it difficult. Some of your basic arcade rail shooter rules apply here, like having to kill enemies before they shoot you, watch out and shoot explosives before they hit you, and don't hit innocent civilians. It is cool that once you get done with some missions, or at least the first one, you get to choose what you want to do next. Gives it some good old replay value. Usually at the end of each level, you fight a boss, which is basically a guy who has a strong vehicle or armor that you have to hit multiple times. However, if you can headshot them just right, it can kill them right then and there and the fight is over. That's a neat little touch for those who are very skilled at games like this. The next mission has us on a highway, freeway, runway Sunday, and we have to take out enemies and vehicles. This is where the game can get harder, especially with the movement of the crosshair. I do find the fastest route is to take out the drivers of the vehicles. I love that 5th generation voice acting here, even though this came out on 6th gen consoles.
Watch out, the enemy is going to shoot. I found the president's daughter in the black convertible with Cobra. Take him out and save the president's daughter. Over. Don't shoot him. The end.
Well, I failed that mission. What's interesting is, when I started over, the first level had me start in a different building than when I started last time. I don't know how many angles you can start out in, or if it's randomized or not, but that's neat. What's also neat is that this is where I learned that you can use the directional buttons to slow down the pace of your aiming. Makes precise aiming a bit more possible. The graphics are obviously dated, but, you know, Dreamcast and early PS2 game. I ended up as far as the 3rd mission, and then I gave up after dying. Despite that though, I thought this game was fine. It's most certainly not a perfect game by any means, but it is a decent start to the series. Now we'll see if they made any improvements for the second game. This one was released in 2000 for arcades and 2001 for PS2. No Dreamcast or GBA this time around. There is a bit more to this game than the last one. We have an extra character we can play as, the training mode has a bit more depth, and there's a 2-player mode. that I didn't get to try because I played this by myself. There's both an indoor shooting range and an outdoor shooting range. They're training modes, of course, and they're pretty good about showing you what to do and how to play the game. The story mode is the main mode here, as most games go. The plot has to do with the guy from the first game and some other dude working together to stop the terrorists in Europe this time around. They don't get along at first, but then they do and they realize they love each other. Wait, why does it say that? This is a fanfiction I'm reading. Anyway, it's an excuse to have the two-player mode. The controls for the game are the same on this controller. You still aim and shoot the same way, aiming that is very sensitive and hope you can shoot while they're still and not moving. The only difference is, the D-pad movement has the same speed as the thumbstick. So there's no real advantage there, at least not that I could tell. I think you have the option to change the speed, but it would have been nice just to use the D-pad at any time for a slower, more focused speed. At least the setting and enemies are a bit different. Not all enemies look the same, and they make sure to show you which ones to shoot before you start a level. We also have the interesting boss fights again, where you either shoot them so many times or try and headshot kill them to end it quickly. The voice acting is about the same, maybe a little improved, but still has that 5th gen / early 6th gen voice acting charm. There's not really that much more I can say about this game that I haven't already said about the first game. Still, I'd say this one is somewhat better despite the D-pad situation. It's a lot like the first game, but with a different story and more content. I never finished the game, but I could still tell it was a bit better, so I would say I like this one a bit more. And to finish things off, we have the third and final game in the collection, Silent Scope 3. This was released in 2002, originally just for the PS2, so no arcade version of the game, but we'll get to that. So we had at least one Silent Scope game each year from 2000, or 1999 if you include arcade, to 2002. Back when we had games in the same series released yearly or every other year, when games took a maximum of 4 years to make instead of a minimum of that. Anyway, let's check out SS3. A lot of the same stuff is here in this game as the previous two. Training modes and story mode. The story has the terrorists doing terrorist things and we gotta take them out. However, this one does feel the most different from the previous games. I mean, it's still kind of the same, but what makes it different is your options to make the game a tad easier. You now have the option to have the crosshair sort of lock onto enemies you're trying to shoot. It doesn't completely hold your hand as you still need to be a bit more precise, but it does make life a bit easier when aiming. Which is good because now you also have to turn around and aim. As in, turn yourself around when these arrows show up so you can find where the enemies are. This only happens in certain areas, so it's not a complete freedom of movement, it's still a rail shooter. The cutscenes, for the most part, actually feel more like cutscenes. Not that Silent Scope 2 didn't have any, but this one has longer cutscenes that have more camera movement. I guess since this one is exclusive to consoles, they could get away with it more. Also this time around, once you finish the first level, you get to choose which one of these other levels to go to and play them in any order you choose. Some are harder than others, but they let you know that by showing how many stars there are. I only completed a couple of them, as these can get quite hard. Despite not being an arcade game and letting you choose which order you go in with the levels, it still plays like an arcade game. Also, despite how hard it can be, I think this one might be the best out of the games included here. Maybe it's because I'm using a controller and this game was made with the controller in mind, but it does feel the best to play. Not only that, this is where I found out there's another game included in this game that itself is in a collection of games. Silent Scope EX was an arcade game released in 2001, and they were nice enough to include it both here and in the original PS2 release of SS3. So if you want that true arcade experience, this is the closest to that for SS3. You don't use the same guy that I haven't been saying the name of. Falcon, I think his name is? Anyway, you don't use Falcon, but instead you use one of these soldiers commanded by Sonya Blade and Jax. This one is a bit more mission-based and straightforward, as you just shoot the ones they tell you to and when to shoot them. It's still largely the same as the first two games, but it plays just a little bit differently that way. I like this one, possibly more than the first two games. So I guess you could say I enjoyed Silent Scope 3 the best overall in the series, both for the main part and for including EX. Overall, Silent Scope Complete is the best way to play these games. Not only for including darn near every Silent Scope game, but also because, at least as of right now, it's fairly cheap to buy. Now, how do I feel about Silent Scope overall? Well, it's good. Like 7 out of 10 good. Might have felt better with the light gun, but for what it is with a controller, I enjoyed my time. I just couldn't see myself getting hours of fun out of this, just about an hour or so at a time. Still, I'd recommend this if you have an Xbox and you like rail shooters. Well, that's all I have to say for this collection. Be sure to like and subscribe for more of these videos. But until next time, I'm not quite sure why these games have the M rating, cause they feel like the bare minimum of the rating if anything, but whatever. Anyway, I'm Danny Ben S, and this has been Gaming in the Past. Thanks for watching.